19. Jai Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivaradari Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivaradari Yashodanandana Rajajanaranjana Yashodanandana Rajajanaranjana Yamunatira Vanachari Yamunatira Vanachari Jai Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jai Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadha Shivasari Gaur Bhaktavrinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare Jaya Vishnupad Paramahamsa Parivrajikacharya Asotra Shadashi Bhadis Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai Ananta Kodi Vaishnava Vrinda Ki Jai Namacharya Srila Haridas Thakur Ki Jai Prem Skaho Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadha Shivasari Gaura Bhaktivedanta Ki Jai. All glories to all the assembled devotees, all glories to all the assembled devotees, all glories to all the assembled devotees, all glories to Srila Prabhupada. Jai Hare Krishna. Thank you, Guru Vajan Prabhu, for putting Hare Krishna into the chat. Anybody else who's listening, please feel free to introduce yourself or just say Hare Krishna. And then it's nice to know that I'm talking to someone. Yeah, thanks for being here. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. So reading from Bhagavad Gita, chapter 2, text 19. Ya enam veti hantaram yaschainam manyate hatam ubautau na vijanito nayam hanti na hanyate. Ya enam veti hantaram yaschainam manyate hatam ubautau na vijanito nayam hanti na hanyate. Yainam viti hantaram yaschainam manyate hatam ubautau na vijanito nayam hanti na hanyate. Okay, word by word. Yaha, anyone who. Enam, this. Viti, knows. Hantaram, the killer. Yaha, anyone who. Cha, also. Enam, this. Manyate, thinks. Hatam, killed. Ubhau, both. Tau, they. Na, never. Vijanitaha, are in knowledge. Na, never. Ayam, this. Hanti kills, na, nor hanyate is killed. Excuse me. Neither he who thinks the living entity the slain, nor he who thinks it slain is in knowledge. For the body slays not, nor is slain. Purport. When an embodied living entity is hurt by fatal weapons, it is to be known that the living entity within the body is not killed. The spirit's soul is so small that it's impossible to kill him by any material weapon, as will be evident from subsequent verses. Nor is the living entity killable, because his spirit. Nor is the living entity killable because of his spiritual constitution. What is killed, or is supposed to be killed, is the body only. This, however, does not at all encourage killing of the body. The Vedic injunction is Mahimsyat sarva bhutani. Never commit violence to anyone. Nor does understanding that the living entity is not killed encourage animal slaughter. Killing the body of anyone without authority is abominable and is punishable by the law of the state, as well as by the law of the Lord. Arjuna, however, is being engaged in killing for the principle of religion and not whimsically. Om Vijnana Tamarandisa Giranjana Shalakaya Chakshur Amilitam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. Nama Om Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prishthaya Bhutale Srimati Bhaktivedanta Swami Namne Namaste Saraswati Devi Gauravani Prashani Nivishesha Shunyavadi Paschatya Deshatani Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadha Shivasadi Gaura Bhaktivinoda Ki Jai. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. So this is a condensed verse and a very short purport, but there's a lot to be spoken about here. First, the immediate point. Neither he who thinks the living entity the slayer, nor he who thinks it slain is in knowledge. For the self slays not, nor is slain. Okay, so the first part is easy to understand in terms of that the soul can never be killed. And this has been emphasized in many verses throughout this section of Bhagavad Gita. I'll just go back and I'll read a few highlights on this point. Those who are seers of the truth have concluded that of the eternal soul there is no change. That which pervades the entire body you should know to be indestructible. No one is able to destroy that imperishable soul. The material so it says the material body of the indestructible, immeasurable, eternal living entity is sure to come to an end. So it's saying that the living entity is eternal, indestructible, and immeasurable. Immediately before this verse, and Prabhupada's referring back to it again because he's saying that the soul cannot be killed because it is so small you can't even measure it. In the Shastra, it gives a measurement of, you take the tip of a hair, a very thin part, chop it into 100 parts, chop it again into 100 parts, and the soul is that tiny. So I'm not sure whether this is to be taken literally or whether the idea is that the soul is basically just so small it's not visible. Because we understand that actually the soul is of a totally different quality to this material world. So to give it a measurement doesn't, you can never measure it because it's not material at all. But this idea of a 10,000th, the tip of a hair, gives us a sense that it's very tiny. It's beyond the measurement of this material world. So, yeah, Prabhupada's referring to that from the verse before, that the soul is immeasurable, so small that there's no possibility for it to be killed. And then again, it's indestructible and eternal. That's the spiritual nature. And because it's spiritual, it can never be killed, because spiritual nature means eternal. And eternal means something cannot be created or destroyed. And then Prabhupada continues in the purport here, that what is killed or is supposed to be killed is the body only. And even then, again, the material body is just a collection of material elements. It's not really destroyed. This is a principle of physics, that nothing is actually destroyed or created. It's just a transformation of energy. And so what we call killing the body is not actually killing the body. What's really happening is that we are doing something to the body which is made of material elements, such that the soul can no longer reside there. It's making that material arrangement no longer fit for the soul to live there. So the Vedic injunction is, and then, so this is the first point, that the soul cannot be killed. It's eternal. And we can make a body no longer habitable by the soul, otherwise known as killing. However, the soul continues on. So before I continue to the next part of Prabhupada's purport, I find this verse quite interesting, and it's not really discussed so much. Neither he who thinks the living entity the slayer, nor he who thinks it slain is in knowledge. For the self slays not, nor is slain. So what it's saying here is that not only can the soul not be killed, but the soul cannot kill either. So if I take it as a first person, it means that I cannot be killed. Okay, we got that part. That's quite easy to understand. But then this part is saying that if someone thinks that I can kill, that I'm a slayer, that I'm a killer, that they're not in knowledge, because I, the self, cannot kill anyone. I cannot slay anyone. So this is quite interesting. And as I said, it's not discussed so much. And what is it trying to say? What I understand from this is that, what I understand from this is talking about the principle of I am not the doer. Because it's not the soul that's killing the person. Again, let's go back to our definition of what killing means. Killing means that we're interacting with a material body such that the soul no longer can reside there. So it's not actually the soul that's doing the killing. It's the body of it's my body. If I'm killing someone, then it's not me that's killing them, it's my body that's killing them. Of course, it is done under the direction of the soul. The soul is giving life to that body and giving direction to that body. But ultimately, it's material elements reacting with other material elements. Reminds me of a funny story. Not sure if it's relevant, but it's funny, so I'll tell it anyway. There was once a person who stole something. He reached into a window and grabbed something and he ran away. Then he was caught by the police. And, eventually he went before the judge. And the judge said, "So you have been caught stealing, and therefore you should be punished. What do you have to say for yourself?" And the man was being quite philosophical and clever, and said, "Actually, I did not steal. It was my hand that stole. So therefore, I should not be punished because of the activities of my hand." And so, this guy thought he was being pretty clever, right? So then the judge, he said, "Okay, well, you think you can be clever? I'll be even more clever." And the judge said, "Okay, that's fine. In that case, I will sentence your hand to go to jail. And it's up to you whether you want to accompany your hand or not." So then this man took off his artificial arm, left it in the courtroom, and walked out. So, this is the cheating of the cheaters. So in this example, we can understand that it's true that actually the hand was doing the stealing rather than the person. However, that hand was under the direction of the person, in the same way that although the soul does not kill, the soul controls the body and mind, and therefore is responsible for the karma that results from the actions that are taken by that body. Okay, just one moment here. See if I can make this appear on the screen. Not seeing that. Let me try another button here. Trying to get the comment to come up. Normally when I'm on a computer, I can easily just tap a button. Ah, there we go. Here's a question from Dev. Thank you for being here again and asking an interesting question. What does the soul contain? What's in it? For example, does it have emotions, thoughts, feelings, memories, attachments, etc.? Interesting. We understand from the material point of view that there's a soul, and then we have a material subtle body, a false ego, which is the first level of material connection, where we identify with something material. We identify as being independent of Krishna ultimately. That's our false ego. And on top of that, we may add additional layers of false ego, such as I'm a man, I'm a woman, I'm a dog, I'm a tree, I'm rich or poor, so many designations that we put on ourselves. And then associated with that false ego, we have a particular kind of intelligence and mentality, emotions, and so on. And then we have a body that matches it as well. So this is from the gross material point of view. And the simple understanding while we're in this material world is that we have these coverings: the material body, the gross body, the subtle body of the mind, intelligence, and the false ego, and then there's the soul. However, we also understand that once we are situated in our natural position in the spiritual world, we don't become impersonal. We still have, as you've mentioned here, emotions, feelings, thoughts, memories, and things like this. But all of those things are purified and complete. So when we come into this material world, these material coverings that we have are perverted reflections of our original body, or our original characteristics. So in the spiritual world, we have a body, a pure spiritual body. We have feelings, thoughts, emotions, memories, attachment to Krishna, and so on. This is part of the soul. So just like we talk about the false ego, there is a real ego. The false ego is that I am the controller. I am separate from Krishna. The goal of life is for my enjoyment, and so on, as well as the different varieties of identification of what role we're playing in this material world. And then there's also the emotions and intelligence. So when the emotions and intelligence are guided by the false ego, they're material. But as soon as we give up the false ego and return to our original spiritual Krishna conscious condition, then our emotions and our mind become purified, and we are acting on the platform of our original spiritual mind and intelligence. And we have a material body, as a spiritual body also, completely free from any material covering. So it's an interesting question. So the soul, in the original condition, has everything: mind, intelligence, and ego. But because it's completely pure and connected to Krishna, there's no material contamination. As soon as we develop that false ego of wanting to be separate from Krishna, then automatically the material body, mind, and intelligence is created, so that we can interface in this world. To give a gross example, gross not meaning as in disgusting, but as in a rough analogy. In our current condition, we have a mind, intelligence, and body, and so on. And sometimes we might play on a computer game. And in that computer game, we take on a different identity. We look different. In different games, you've got different powers and different abilities and things like that. And so in order for us to play the game, we have to have a character, or they call it an avatar. And that avatar's got, these different qualities. And there's no way that we can play the computer game in the body that we're in. We have to, either put the goggles on or look at the screen, and we're separate from the character in the game, but we identify with the character in that game. And then as soon as the character dies in the game's over, we're still existing in our original condition, but that character in the game is gone. So it's a similar example that we have our original condition, but at the moment we're in a virtual reality where we're imagining ourselves to be something different than we really are. So yes, the soul is not lacking in anything. It's just that in this material world, in order to interface with the material energy, we need to have a material body and mind, so we can function here. But once we can give that up, our original condition is there, which contains these same abilities of thinking and feeling and willing and all of those qualities that we typically see in the material mind and body. So I hope that is a helpful answer to the question. If you have any insights or anything else you want to add, that would be cool. Feel free to keep commenting. So this idea that we're not the doer, I think it's really interesting to think about. Not just from our point of view, that I'm not the doer, but also when we look at things that happen in the world, we often look at the immediate cause and we don't look at the deeper causes. When Parikshit Maharaj is challenging, coming to the bull and asking, who did this to you? The bull didn't want to answer, because he was saying that actually, who's actually to say? Who's responsible? Because someone may do something according to their karma, but it's a reaction for something I've previously done, or that they're acting according to the modes of nature, which are controlled by someone else other than that person. So if we blame someone that comes up to us and pushes us. So, oh, that person did that to me. But maybe they did that because they were under the influence of the modes of nature for a particular reason, and it was due to our karma that happened to us. And so can we really blame that person, or is that person just an instrument of our karma? So it's interesting. Recently, my godbrother posted something on Facebook. He said that my conclusion is that Fauci killed my guru. So in case you don't know the background, His Holiness Bhakti Charu Swami died, left his body and, continued on to further pastimes last year in about July. And the immediate cause is COVID-19, coronavirus. However, what my godbrother was saying is that actually, it wasn't actually the coronavirus that killed him, but it was the mistreatment that he was given by the doctors under the guidance of Fauci, who's the medical advisor in the United States. So this is sort of looking at it from another level. But then you can also look at it and say, well, actually, was it really Fauci, or is Fauci acting under the guidance of higher, a higher group of people in our human society, or even, human, or maybe, let's just say humans in our society who have got some agenda, and because of the agenda, they, through Fauci, introduced particular regulations and rules. Like you're not allowed to use this treatment, you have to use this treatment, which, after examination, is the opposite of what should have been done. Like, for example, there's some very basic remedies that have been shown to be helpful towards this disease called, like vitamin C, vitamin D, ivermectin, and some other, medications have been shown to be helpful. But Fauci and his organization said that you're not allowed to use those treatments. You're only allowed to use the patented drug, remdesivir, which we make a lot of money out of. So that's one level to understand it, that because of this desire, perhaps, to make money, then they wanted their drug to be used and no other drug. So that's one level, doing it for the sake of money. Another level is that there's an agenda to, whatever it is, whether they deliberately want the population to be reduced or whether they just want to control people more or whatever. There's another level that you could consider that. And that there's people behind Fauci who are telling Fauci what to do. And then beyond that, you understand that actually the demigods are controlling everything that's happening in this world according to people's karma. They're instituting different things. But ultimately, Krishna is the Supreme Personality of Godhead. And there was a meme that was created with these different levels, which I thought was pretty cool. But I couldn't find it, unfortunately. I'll put it into the comments when I track it down again. But ultimately, it comes back to Krishna as the Supreme Personality of Godhead, and he's the ultimate cause of all causes. So we have to be careful sometimes when we get caught up in the immediate or maybe secondary or tertiary causes of things, and ultimately understanding that everything's the desire of Krishna, and to look at it and understand, why Krishna might be arranging things in that way. It could be something that we consider personally, that Krishna's arranged this for me personally, because I need to be purified, or Krishna wants me to be more devoted to him. We could take it as a test. Krishna's testing me. How will I react in the situation? So this is a responsible view of looking at things. That, okay, something has happened. Now, what is there for me to learn from it, and how should I respond to the situation in the best way? But ultimately, understanding that, yes, Krishna is the Supreme Personality of Godhead, and we shouldn't be too, what's the word? Sort of like attached or disturbed by, the immediate things that are happening. just like Prabhupada said, that the things that are happening in the world at the moment, where the whole economy is collapsing, and like we see in Sri Lanka and the Netherlands, there's all kinds of weird things happening. That there's wars and happening, and they're escalating to a global kind of level. And Prabhupada at one point was saying that you just chant Hare Krishna, and the wars won't happen anymore. But later on, Prabhupada said that actually the war will happen, because it has to happen. Just like there's different seasons, spring, summer, autumn, and winter. All these seasons are required. And Prabhupada was saying that it's required for this current civilization to collapse in order for the new golden age of Lord Chaitanya to come through. So it's helpful to understand that these things that are happening, although they're very disturbing, and on an individual level we can place blame for different things to be happening, it's part of Krishna's plan for society to collapse so that the new golden age of Lord Chaitanya can come through. And when we understand that, it can give us a little bit of peace of mind to know that actually, okay, this is part of Krishna's plan, and we can be ready for it. We don't have to try to resist it or try to stop it. When we know that, okay, this is what Krishna has planned, this is what's going to happen, how can I place myself in the best way to be Krishna conscious in this situation and be prepared for the golden age? Hopefully we'll live a long life and be able to pass through this winter season, this difficult time, as the golden age of Lord Chaitanya begins to manifest itself more and more. So this is just about the point of immediate cause and ultimate cause, which is Krishna. So we'll just continue the last point of the purport. Prabhupada says here that the fact that the body, that no one can kill, or that the body cannot be killed, doesn't mean that we can just kill. Doesn't make it right. He says that this, however, does not at all encourage killing of the body. The Vedic injunction is Mahim Syat Sarva Bhutani. Never commit violence to anyone. Nor does understanding that the living entity is not killed encourage animal slaughter. Killing the body of anyone without authority is abominable and is punishable by the law of the state as well as by the law of the Lord. Arjuna, however, is being engaged in killing for the principle of religion and not whimsically. So here we see that, yes, the body is not, the soul is not killed. However, it doesn't mean that we can just go and go around killing, saying that, anyway, if they're a soul, they'll keep living. No, there's principles of Dharma here that we need to understand, and that we want to minimize violence. Prabhupada's described it in different places. Now, in this Bhagavad Gita, Krishna's telling Arjuna to fight. So, from one point of view, that could be considered violence. And Prabhupada has, in several cases, said that we're not a non-violence movement. When it's required, violence needs to be there. So the principle is not so much about killing or not killing. The principle is, when is it right to kill and when is it not right to kill? And understanding the proper application of this. And Urmila wrote a very interesting thing on Facebook quite recently where I was reading, where she made that point that yes, killing has its place. And she made the point, however, it is certainly not for those who are dependent on us and that are helpless. Specifically speaking about abortion as one of the issues that's that's relevant to this topic here. A soul has taken shelter in your womb, and if you kill that soul, that is very sinful. Say if you invite someone to your house and then you kill them, this is not at all proper. In the Vedic system, the killing, like Arjuna is doing, is on the battlefield between those who have committed each other to the battle. I'm here to fight you and you're here to fight me. We'll fight to the death. But if one begs for shelter from the other, immediately, no more killing. If someone turns their back and runs away out of cowardice, immediately, no more killing. There are codes of conduct and of honor that were practiced by the Kshatriyas. And therefore, it wasn't just like, all out genocide, of men, women, children, innocent people, people who are sleeping. Like we can see the example, who was it? Ashwatthama, the son of Dronacharya, who went and killed the sleeping sons of Draupadi. This was considered most heinous and sinful. Killing someone who has no opportunity to defend themselves, just children. And then Prabhupada also talks about animal slaughter. Again, these animals are innocent. They're there for our protection. And the Bible even says that man has dominion over the animals. Dominion comes from the word dominus, like Anno Domini, the year of our Lord. Domino means the Lord. Lord means someone who protects others, who's the master. And, like they like to say Lord Jesus or Lord Krishna. Lord means someone who is there to protect us and to look after us. So if we have lordship over the animals, it doesn't mean that we kill them. It means that we protect them. So again, animal slaughter should not be encouraged at all. And so in society, these slaughterhouses should be abolished. If someone wants to kill an animal, privately, that's their business and their karma. But not cows, some lower animal. But certainly there should not be any slaughterhouses, particularly, that's supported by the government. So this is the point, that we should not kill. We should try to minimize violence and, have compassion on everyone. Even in that, we shouldn't kill unnecessarily. And therefore, our mood should be that we don't want to cause any harm, not just death, but also harm, physical harm to anyone. And that's why, some devotees have been very strong in, trying to avoid people taking the vaccine, because we can see, and time will show more and more how harmful it is, that we don't want anyone to suffer that harm. It's not our core business, of course, but for devotees, we want to encourage devotees to be safe as much as possible, because we want to minimize this violence. But ultimately, it's about following what Krishna wants us to do. And for Arjuna, he wants him to fight. And so this is not wrong. This is not violence. Ultimately, this is following Krishna's orders. And so there's a question here by Guru Bojan, which I'll read in a second. I'll just summarize what we've just been talking about. So although the soul cannot be killed, the soul within the body experiences suffering when killed, or when there's violence to that body. And therefore, we try to avoid causing harm to anyone as much as possible. And sometimes there'll be times where it's required, according to the principles of religion. These cases are quite rare. Okay, so Buri Rajan Prabhu's question, does it all come up? Yes. Why is it that some try to understand the soul by a measured analysis? Knowledge is revealed by acting according to Krishna's desire. I wonder if you could word that a little differently. I didn't quite understand the first part. Why is it that some try to understand the soul by a measured analysis? Yeah, if you could elaborate on that, I'll give my best to answer the question here. So you're saying that our knowledge comes from Krishna. and that he reveals the knowledge to us when he sees fit. So why do we need to analyze it and get kind of technical to try to understand about the soul? It's interesting because I remember Urmila made this point several times, that when the devotees were talking to Prabhupada says, "What do you preach to people?" And they said, "Oh, we talk about God." And then Prabhupada says, "No, before you talk about God, you should talk about you are not the body." So this is the first understanding that people need to have, and it can be understood to a certain extent by analysis, from our material point of view, that we can see that just like in the earlier verse, the body's changing all the time, but there's something within that body that's staying the same. That's the soul. So just as we've changed from boyhood to youth to old age, at the time of death we'll go into another body. This is a logical conclusion. And, we've also spoken about the evidence of previous lives that some people still remember. And so when we understand that actually, okay, so I'm different from this body, that puts us in a position to inquire. So if I am spiritual and not material, what is my duty in life? What should I be doing? And at that point, then we can understand that you're a soul, you're a small soul that's, been covered by material energy, but there's a great soul, God. And by surrendering to him, he'll reveal everything to you that you need to know. It's also said God helps those who help themselves. If someone's really sincere and wants to understand things as they are, then Krishna will reciprocate with them also, that I'm trying to understand who I am. What's my real nature? What's the nature of this world? The subjects of Bhagavad Gita. When Krishna sees that desire in someone, then he'll make arrangements. Perhaps they'll find the Bhagavad Gita, or they'll meet a guru who can teach them these things. So I hope that addresses the question. If you want to elaborate more, that would be good. Now, sorry, I just saw now that Beverly also added to the previous question about the, does our soul have a body? Does the soul always require a body, be it material or spiritual? So when we say about requiring a body, it's like saying, does the soul require consciousness? It doesn't require it. It's the nature of the soul to have consciousness. And in the same way, it's the nature of the soul to have form and to have emotions and feelings and things like that. It's not that, that there's the soul, which is just like an impersonal spark. And in the material world, we have like this material body that has emotions and things. And in the spiritual world, there's something spiritual that's added to the soul that makes it that, a so-called spiritual body. That spiritual body is the soul. The soul has got their natural form and their natural feelings and everything like that. It's not like something added. The soul's not just a sort of a spark of energy, but there's this original spiritual form of body and mind, intelligence, and so on. That is our original body. Now, because it's spiritual, it doesn't have the limitations that the material body has. So a spiritual body could transform. If Krishna wants to eat a mango, we might transform into a mango, something like this. It's a kind of silly example, but the spiritual body has got amazing capabilities beyond the material body that we have. But we have a natural spiritual form, and you can't take it away. I hope that's clear. So it's not like in this world we have like a soul and we have a body, and they're separate. But in the spiritual world, that body that we have is us. It's non-different. We are fully spiritual, and the body that we show is us. I hope that was clear. It's a bit hard to explain. Obviously, these things are beyond our experience, but hopefully that answers the question and makes some sense. If anyone has any other questions or want to elaborate anything further, that'll be great. I'll just check I haven't missed something here. Yeah, so there was a question from Beverly and from Buri Bojan. Okay, thanks. Beverly's doing thank you praying symbol. It's technically a praying symbol, but it's used as thanks as well, which is kind of interesting. Yeah, so just to summarize this verse again, it's an interesting verse because it says that neither he who thinks the living entity the slayer, nor he who thinks it slain is in knowledge. For the self slays not, nor is slain. And we looked at Prabhupada's 2 points here, which is that the soul is not killed. When we conventionally understand killing, what's happening instead is that the body is being we're doing something to the body which makes it that the soul can no longer inhabit that body. This is what we mean by killing. The body itself is not even killed really, because it's never alive. But we're taking away the body, making the body no longer habitable by the soul, and then the soul's forced to go into another body. This is what we mean by killing. Now, the soul is not killed. The soul continues on to another body. And the person who's doing the killing is also not actually killing. It's the material body that's actually doing the killing. And therefore, the soul is not actually the killer. And also, we were discussing how when someone acts, they are often acting, under the influence of the mode. Well, they're always acting under the influence of the modes of material nature. So even when we say that the material body is doing the acting, it's actually the soul influenced by the modes of nature is making their body act in a particular way. So we were talking about the different levels of causes. According to someone's karma, they'll act in a particular way. And all of these things combined together result in actions that happen. Ultimately, Krishna is the supreme cause of all causes. As Gandhi was fond of saying, not a blade of grass moves without the will of the Supreme Lord. And then Prabhupada, his second point, the first point is the soul can never be killed. And then his second point is that although the soul can never be killed, we shouldn't think that it's okay to kill, like eating meat by killing animals or doing abortion or just, killing people because they're a different color or something like that. No, these are punishable activities, punishable by the laws of nature and also punishable by the government, as we know, in general. Sometimes the government's laws are not in alignment. So a person may do something which is allowed by law in that country, but still they'll have to suffer the karma of that reaction. All right, so here's a follow-up from Guru Bhajan Prabhu. When I see the soul, I will believe it, but for the wise who is in knowledge, they can see. Yeah, so people often say that, if I can't see it, I don't believe it. Seeing is believing. And Prabhupada says that we shouldn't put so much emphasis on the eyes. That sight is just one of our senses, and hearing is better, because from hearing we can get this revealed knowledge. And also, of course, our sight is very limited. We can't even see the inside of our eyelids, the closest thing to our eye. So what is the value of our seeing? It says, the wise who is in knowledge, they can see. Yeah. So it's learning to think straight. Jayadvaita Swami had a course called Straight Thinking and Strong Speaking. So learning to think clearly, logically, and to study these revealed scriptures is the way to really understand things as they are, as far as our limited material mind and body can handle it at this point, and intelligence, of course. And so ultimately, we're engaging in a kind of an experiment. I often give this example, which I took from Sadhuputa's book called Mechanistic and Non-Mechanistic Science, where if someone wants to know, is there such a thing as an atom? Is it really true? Like the scientists tell us that there's these atoms that are the small particles that make up things. Or maybe you want to know about the subatomic particles. So we might just accept the scientists and say, well, look, this person's spent their whole life studying the subject. I'll just accept what they have to say and leave it at that. However, if someone really wants to become advanced in science, and they might decide that, okay, well, I want to prove it for myself that the atom exists. Now, the physicist who knows about atoms and so on, they have all these expensive machines like proton accelerators or whatever they're called, and they do these experiments that prove, their conclusions. So if I'm just a new person, I can't just straight away go and say, okay, let me have a go on the proton accelerator and show me the atom. Give me a microscope, really powerful microscope where I can see the atom. It doesn't really work like that. So first of all, you have to understand some of the background information, and you have to also do some experiments to get faith in the scientists. So you approach a guru in the scientific community, go to university, do some initial experiments, and the teacher will say, this is the experiment. If you do this, this will happen. And then when you do it and you get the result, then you get more faith in the scientist. And ultimately, this process repeats and repeats with more and more experiments, building on the initial knowledge you already have, until ultimately you have enough background knowledge to be able to use the proton accelerator and interpret the results of the experiment, like a little blip on a screen that proves something. So it's the same in Krishna consciousness that, show me God, I want to see God, show me the soul. Well, you're not qualified at this point. So you need to follow the process. Just like the student goes to university, you need to do the initial experiments. Okay, you do this and see what result you get. You start chanting Hare Krishna and see how it affects your life. You give up sinful activities, 4 regulative principles, see how it affects your life. So we do it, we get an effect, and our faith increases. We associate with devotees, we get a result from that as well. By practicing all of the prescribed sadhana process, the 5 potent forms of devotional service, study Srimad Bhagavatam, chant Hare Krishna, do deity worship, live in a holy place, and associate with devotees. If we do these things, we'll get the results and our faith will keep increasing until ultimately Krishna will reveal our original identity to us, our spiritual, natural, who we are, and we'll also be able to see Krishna face to face. So it's a great question, Prabhu, about how we can acquire knowledge. And on that note, there's a little joke that Urmila also shared on on Facebook. The question was, what is epistemology? The student asked the teacher, what is epistemology? And the teacher replied, how would I know? And in case you don't get the joke, epistemology is the study of knowledge and how we understand things. So anyway, I thought it was funny when I read it, and it helps you to understand the meaning of epistemology. And so, this is a really important question. How do we know what's true? What's the process for understanding? And for us, by practicing the process of bhakti yoga, this knowledge becomes more and more real to us. We get more and more realization, and more becomes revealed to us. So thanks for the question, Bhuribajan Prabhu, and also Beverly. It's nice to have interaction. even if it's through typing. I quite like typed questions because sort of forces you to think through your question, make it concise, and then it makes it easier to answer also. Right, so I'll just read the verse again. Neither he who thinks the living entity the slayer, nor he who thinks it slain is in knowledge. For the self slays not, nor is slain. So you're eternal, you cannot be killed. However, you are not the doer. And so we should understand that Krishna is the ultimate source of, the ultimate cause of all causes. And whatever we do, we try to minimize violence as much as possible and do things according to Krishna's desire. All right, I'll end here. Thank you very much for the participation. And I look forward to meeting with you again soon. Hare Krishna.